program in memory of Raymond Andrews from Michelle Andrews and Thomas Dooley of Kentucket, New Hampshire. 2C, approval to accept a donation of $200 made to the Hunter Safety Program in memory of Scott B. Whittier from David and Mary Ahern of Bradford, Massachusetts. 2D, approval to accept a donation of $50 from Michael Boyd of Tiverton, Rhode Island, deposited in the small gifts and donations account. 2E, approval to accept the following donation, a total of $75 in the memory of Daniel Sheehy of Rochester, New Hampshire, for the deposit in the small gifts and donations account. $50 from Robert Bavacci of Dover, New Hampshire, and $25 from Thomas and Ann Hardeman of Dover, New Hampshire, totaling $75. I'd entertain a motion to accept items A through 2A through 2E.
Make the motion.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept items 2A through 2E. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, stand approved. Item 3, approval to accept the donation of the Mooney Clark Boat Access Area on the Pemigewasset River in Bristol, New Hampshire, from the Central River Power Company, valued at approximately $89,400.
Since Scott here, it's not something.
I'm noticing that. Okay.
I don't know if you want to speak to it.
Yeah. So the Mooney Clark Boat Access Area, the history on that is that was part of a mitigation package that Public Service created when they built the dam at, on the Pemmy River. Kevin, what's the name of that dam? Right there.
Pemmy River Dam, I think.
Okay. So anyways, this was part of the mitigation on that dam. And technically what they did is they gifted it to the town, but there was a problem with the recording. I think it got recorded in the wrong county. And to make a long story short, it got adopted by Fish and Game, and Mooney and Clark are two deceased COs, and it's been dedicated in their memory for how many years now? Eons, right?
Yeah, since the late 50s, I believe.
Yeah. And it came up a couple years ago. Public Service sold the dam. The new owner of the dam was asking questions about the tax bill, and it came up and kind of surprised the town and surprised us a little bit that technically they had been sending the tax bill. The town had never stopped sending the power company the tax bill. Public Service has been paying it since the 50s. The new power company had some questions about that. They've since recognized the fact that it doesn't belong to the power company, and in discussions with the town, they were willing to donate to allow us to take over the boat landing and have it become one of our Fish and Game boat landings. It's for those of you who haven't been there, it's in Bristol. It's a nice little boat landing. It has adequate parking for the landing. It accesses, and I apologize, I don't know the mileage, but 7 or 8 miles, I believe, of the Pemmy. There's a lot of fishing, a lot of duck hunting, folks that do those activities that access this, as well as canoers and kayakers and just people who enjoy boating on the river. Lieutenant Nealon told me that sometimes when the boat access is, or the parking lot and boat access, the parking lot's full over at Newfound, that we get some folks that'll come over here and go boating for the day on the river. So it is a crucial boat access. The opportunity for us to have control over it instead of the town gives the advantage that, you know, at a later date, I mean, sooner or later, there'll be more customers coming to that boat access, and the town might decide at that point not to allow out-of-towners to park or create high parking fees and stuff like that. So I think it's a good idea for the Fish and Game to take over that boat access to protect it forever for state access.
There's no photographs or anything you have that could show us? what
No.
it looks like?
No, I didn't.
I can get those from Garrett maybe when he returns and send them to the commission.
That'd be great, yeah. This is over 25,000. That applies to spending more than anything. Does the commission wish to address this today, or would you want to get some pictures of it, see, do a little research, or are you comfortable voting on it today?
I've got one question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
The back taxes, who's responsible?
Nobody. They were
So
paid.
we're not gonna get that with
No, they were paid. There are no back taxes. Public service paid them out of state and then the town took over. So there's no unpaid taxes.
I'll make a motion making that to, action.
Make a motion to do what?
There's an action
Making an
item.
action item to vote on today.
Is there a second?
I had a question.
Need a second before we can discuss.
I'll second it
the vote.
over here.
It's been seconded. You have a
Yeah,
question?
I was hoping we could hold off until perhaps next month, and the reason I'd like to go visit the place myself. Some of you probably have been there, but I certainly haven't had that opportunity.
Yeah.
Is it crucial that we know
I
today?
think, I don't know, without Gary here, I'm not 100% sure.
Any long-term maintenance things we gotta
No,
look into?
nothing, it's in pretty good shape for the landing that it is. It obviously will always need, you're always gonna end up needing maintenance. What I've instructed Garrett is when we take it over to put it in line with the other boat accesses as far as, the urgency of maintenance. The one thing is that we are in the process of, we have to create a state highway. So I do know that we're in the process of starting that process. So I don't know whether or not, if by not voting on it, it would slow it down by a month or not.
Commissioner Caven?
Along the lines of Commissioner Temple, can you tell us about the general condition of it? I mean, is it?
It's a gravel
It's
parking
gravel.
lot, gravel road,
The ramp,
concrete.
it is concrete. When you get this access, all right, you mentioned the parking lot. How much land, if you will, area goes with this acquisition?
I'm trying to think, I peg it around 3 to 5, but I'm not 100% sure.
3 to 5 acres.
Yeah.
So there's no danger of someone taking half the parking lot away at some point in time.
I don't believe so. That's why we're trying to get at, take over ownership of it so that, forever we'd be able to maintain, keep it open to the state level.
Commissioner Green?
You said something about the process of having to do something with state highway?
Yes, so all of our roads going to our boat accesses, believe it or not, are a state highway. So we have to go through the process. We've already reached out to Councilor Kenny because it's in his district to appoint a committee that will have public hearings, and we gotta go through the process of it. Because right now it's classified as a town road, so it's gonna have to go from town road to state road. That's normal practice.
Commissioner Hodge?
We have had far greater discussions for significantly less amount of money. So I have some questions about expenses. We bring in something like this new, how does that get added to an already kind of tight and constrained budget from a maintenance and all of that? And my final thought would be, if there's no criticality to it, I think we're not doing an $89,000 donation justice, and I would like to see the full detailed presentation next month.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Price?
thank you. Would it be appropriate for Commissioner Temple, since he wants to go there and he is the chair of the infrastructure committee, maybe to take 2 members, you and another member, and check it out, kind of report back to us what they think? That would be a better use of time.
Right now, there's a motion on the floor, and second. We're gonna deal with that motion before we go in. Commissioner Rhodes?
Scott, yeah, this money, or this property, if it's donated, can you match this money federally, for us to ultimately get money back via anything like Whitney Robinson or Dingley Johnson?
I don't think we'd be able to do that, but whether or not if we could use it to match on another federal, boat landing,
Okay.
we're not able to do that.
Scott, question on the access road. How long is it? Any
Oh, it's not terribly long,
culverts
No
or anything
culverts.
that requires
no culvert.
major maintenance?
It's just been loads of gravel and grading up until this point.
I'm familiar with the spot. It is a nice spot. It's a big gravel parking lot. It's easy access off the road. I haven't been there super recently, but anytime I've been there, there's no maintenance issues there at all. I think it's a really good location.
Can I ask? Being somewhat familiar with the area, where is it exactly? Can you describe it? Right.
When you get off exit 23 and start heading towards Bristol,
Yes.
it's on the right-hand side, right after you go over the bridge.
Over the bridge.
Not
Right after you
far
go over the
off
bridge,
the
it's right there on the
highway.
Yes.
right-hand side.
Got
You
it.
can see it from the road.
Yeah.
See the parking lot.
Yes.
Mr. Green?
My last comment, we've heard the figure of the $89,000. One, this is a donation. Two, keep in mind, the commission's part of our job is to get access. And I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Hodge?
I agree with you, and I don't want my comments to be misconstrued that I don't support that. What comes to mind is, we had like 2 meetings of discussion on a success bond donation, right? And that was valued at,
That was a very complicated issue, or was more complicated.
and we're having a casual discussion about a pretty important access point, and I believe in consistency in how we approach things, and I'm excited about a launch that sounds as great as Commissioner LaChance says, but I'd like to have the presentation and have some more of this documented, and I think it makes sense if the infrastructure committee visits that, and we kind of follow a consistent due diligence as we've done in other donations and other property.
Move the question.
Was this presented at the infrastructure committee? Were they made aware of this prior to the commission meeting?
I don't know.
Could you read back the motion?
There's a motion to make this an action item. And we haven't really moved forward with another motion, just a little discussion.
Yeah. We'd have to vote on the action item first, and then whatever action you want to take after you move it to an action item.
But it is already an action
Excuse
item.
me?
It is already an action item number 3.
Yeah, we didn't need that motion.
Oh, okay. All right, so it's an action item. What do you wish to do? Is there a motion other than to make it an action item?
They're gonna make the motion then to accept the donation.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the donation of the Mooney Clark Boat Access Area on the Pemmican-Wasset River in Bristol, New Hampshire, valued at $89,400. Is there any further discussion?
I'm not going to support that, but I want it to be clear, it's not that I don't support in the notes the donation. I don't want my vote of not supporting that to be misconstrued by people who might read the minutes later. I want to follow a consistent process, so I'm not going to support it.
Any further discussion?
I just, I agree with totally supporting it, yet, in addition to the responsibility that we have, which is to provide or help or accept access, I think we also have to be involved with due diligence. And I just think a drive-by up there, before I would vote to support it, is what I personally would like to do. And, knowing a little something about real estate and acquisitions, the devil is in the details, and I would just hope that because it's being gifted essentially, that there isn't there isn't something there that, that we should be aware of. That's, I think spending money, we should move cautiously. And I am, if everything looks okay, both, you know, in the written word, meaning how it's deeded, and it looks good physically, by observation, 110% support. So there's a long explanation for why I'm a little hesitant.
Are you saying that you want the title work done before you vote on it?
In some cases, I think that's very important that we get to see that stuff. I think we need to have at least an outline of how the title will be taken and to be certain that there are no strings attached, for lack of, to just make it very simple.
That can drive up the cost of us acquiring land through gifts, because even though the commission would vote to accept the gift, if the title comes up with a problem, that's not gonna go forward.
Well, again, I'm not wishing to take the discussion off into the weeds,
Yeah.
but if that is always going to be the case, I think that needs to be said and be a matter of record. That, you know, if there's something that is, upon discovery, okay, in doing some title work, okay, so that we obtain something that's unencumbered, okay, that we know, all right, and it's a matter of record, we're not going to accept this, okay, if it's compromised in any way. Does that make sense? I'm just trying to be careful here about spending every penny.
I guess I'm just saying that at some point, you know, to my way of thinking, the commission ought to be making a decision on, like Ray suggesting, that yes, we support boat accesses, yes, we would like to take this boat access over, and then the rest of the work goes back to staff.
Yeah.
And we're the ones that are checking on titles, to make sure titles are correct, that kind of stuff.
Commissioner Stone.
Is there a time that the commission has to make a decision on this?
I'm unfamiliar, I apologize. I don't think there is an exact time limit. We'll just have to slow up the
We could
process.
put it off if we wanted to.
Commissioner Murphy.
For this value, this has to also be approved by GNC, correct?
Correct.
So what is the packet of information that has to go to them? Because if we're making an approval based on a discussion, but then they need a packet of details to approve, we're making decisions not on the same information. So I would like to see at a minimum what needs to go to GNC for approval.
And you're probably about 6 months away from
Okay.
it.
I thought I had a last comment.
What's that?
I thought on my last comment would be my last, but with the discussion going on, everybody's talking expenses. This is a donation. Yes, there'd be an expense to maintain the program. I'm going to refer back to something that a lot of you commissioners weren't here for about 4 years ago. How much per year are we paying in boat rental ramps? A lot more than this. The Fish and Game actually pays for rental of programs. This we would own. And what I'm talking about, I know Chairman Stoll, you remember this, when I brought this up about Wagner's land rentals and boat rentals, you know, ramp rentals. If we're gonna sit here and wait for titles and everything, and I agree with the director, titles, but there's a tremendous expense on something that, this is a boat ramp, we're not taking in 3,000 acres of land.
Commissioner LaChance.
Can I ask, Director? Look, my recollection is that there's a sign there already that says it's a Fish and Game boat ramp.
As I said, there was a lot of confusion about who owned this for a long time.
Okay, so I guess my question is, are we already maintaining, have we been maintaining it?
It was maintained in a, let me say, a loose mechanism. COs were getting donations from the
Okay,
power company, from DOT.
all right. All right, so I guess I'm just trying to figure out if it's something that, well, if this is almost just like a technicality where we're already.
We're trying to fix a
There's
problem that's existed.
There's already a sign there that
Yeah.
says it's a fishing game boat, we're already taking care of it, it's not as though we're taking on something new, really, it's just fixing the technicality, we don't technically own it right now.
Correct.
Okay.
Any further discussion? The motion is to accept this boat rent. You ready for the question? All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you don't want to accept this.
I make a motion to table,
To what?
to table.
Second.
Oh, then it can't come back, right?
Yeah, can. Yeah. Okay, that's the whole point.
She can make the motion and it's not debatable. Is the motion to table seconded?
Chris.
I second that.
Been moved and seconded to table this action. Is there any date certain on the table?
So, next meeting,
Further action of the commission.
For what?
Further action of the commission.
and the infrastructure committee.
Okay. You heard the motion, the table, shall further commission action. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Abstained?
Oh,
I'm sorry, who's
2,
opposed?
3. 1, 2, 3, 4. I would suggest, Mr. Director, that next time something like this comes in front of us, that we have more information to.
Yeah, I apologize, I didn't realize Garrett wasn't going to be here.
Commissioner Caven?
You know, I think this could be simplified, and it doesn't need to require a title search and, you know, lawyering up and all of that. But what would work for me is if I could read exactly what is going to be deeded to us, Scott. That's all. That would be, this is the legal description that we are going to accept, okay, as this gift. Okay, and then it would be up to us, as part of our responsibilities, to take time to read that, okay? And just be comfortable with that. I mean, it's a gift, and you know, I immediately want to run halfway towards it, okay, because it is a gift, and it's great. I just am concerned that in real estate transactions, sometimes, you know, there is a tail type of things that you just don't know about, and I just, I just wouldn't want that to ever become a problem just because we were overwhelmed with the generosity of this gift and what might be attached to it. So a simple description. This is exactly what the gift is. That's simple.
it has been discussed, and I don't want to lose sight of the infrastructure committee. That is the perfect opportunity like legislation, right? You bring a recommendation, that committee is the one who hashes out all the details, and then they come to the full commission with a recommendation. So I would encourage that that be the process for probably this one, but all future ones, and it takes away all of this additional back and forth discussion.
And Director, just for your information, Commissioner Temple is no longer chairman of that committee. Commissioner LaChance is assumed the reins of that committee again as chair. You got your charge, I guess. Okay, moving on. Number 4, the Wildlife Division is seeking commission approval to accept 6 prize donations listed below, generously donated by Strom Ruger and Company, Woodman Arm, Prime Archery, Moore Sporting Goods, Rough Grouse Society, and the National Chapter of the National Wild Turkey Foundation for use in the following surveys. 2022 Deer Hunter Male Survey, there are 2 prizes. A Ruger American Rifle with a Vortex Crossfire 2 rifle scope valued at $799, generously donated by Strom Ruger and Company. Woodman Arms Patriot muzzleloader valued at $879, generously donated by Woodman Arms of Fremont, New Hampshire. 2022 bow hunter survey, prime compound bow valued at $1,099, generously donated by Prime Archery and More Sporting Goods of Hillsborough, New Hampshire. 2022-2023 small game hunter survey. Ruger American rifle with Vortex Crossfire 2 rifle scope valued at $799, generously donated by Strom Ruger and Company. 2022 rough grouse wing and tail survey. Charles Daly 601 12-gauge shotgun valued at $309, generously donated by the Rough Grouse Society. And the 2023 Spring Turkey Hunter Survey, Mossberg Maverick 88 12-gauge shotgun valued at $293, generously donated by the New Hampshire chapter of the National Wild Turkey Foundation. I'd entertain a motion to accept those firearms from those generously donated individuals and companies. Second. Moved and second. Seconded by Commissioner DeRosa. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand approved. Moving on to informational item, financial statement. Kathy's here. Anybody got any questions of Kathy on the financial statement?
Well, there wasn't one. I sent you all an email that the year is still open, so the items will not be completed until next week.
Number 2 was a canine presentation by the law enforcement division. But the law enforcement division is busy on a drowning detail right now, hunting for a body, so I understand that's not going to be heard. Is that right, Colonel?
That's correct. I would like to take the opportunity to introduce a couple of new conservation officers,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, if it's
Perfect.
appropriate. So I'd ask them both to stand. So these two are the top 2 candidates of over 100 candidates this last testing. They were sworn in Friday. We're excited about both of them. They both come to us with experience. Eva Golden worked for Wareham Department of Natural Resources before coming here, so she more or less did what we're asking her to do, so we're excited to have her on board. Griffin McEwen, did I get that right, Griffin? Sir, don't be bashful. Griffin was a dispatcher for Mass EPO, so we took a couple of people from Mass. They are screaming at us down there. We hope to get a couple more, especially if they're this caliber. So we're excited to have them both. They're in there, they were sworn in Friday, so they're in their first 2 weeks, basically, of spending time with the major, going over everything for cruisers, the radios, the commission, so we thought it'd be a great opportunity to bring them down and introduce them to all of you. So I want to welcome them aboard.
They realize they can never go back.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Okay, while we're on that, we got some time allotted right here, and I want to discuss future presentations that we enlightened onto. I have a list here that was presented to former Chairman Green that I have to keep signing on to the damn thing as to what was on that list, and I would like to see the list. Thank you. First one was forest management in the state. The second one was upland game bird management. The third one was current deer populations in the state and what that means for the management. The next one is impact of climate change and planning on our natural resources. The next one is planning for infrastructure improvement, such as boat access improvement. Good timing on that one. Capital improvement plan for our buildings and facilities. And then quote-unquote executive report for the powder mill engineering and improvement, and AOT, area of terrain permit processing.
Alteration.
What's that?
Alteration, that's a typo.
Oh,
So this list, prior Chairman Green shared this with the full commission on October 3rd, also shared that with Scott on October 3rd, so you have a copy of that in your inbox.
So does anybody, any other commissioner have any earth-shattering recommendations they would like to have, Commissioner Hodges?
We also had talked about a wind farm presentation that we had put off to take care of rulemaking. So if we can add that back on, also during
You mean offshore wind?
And then also during rulemaking, I was part of a discussion, requested additional follow-up relative to coyote management, and the ask was the team take that away and then follow up before the end of the year.
Mr. Director, did I hear you say that that's going to be in October, the wind farm? Or did I hear?
Actually, we got another problem that was presented to me this morning. Yes, that's what we had originally discussed, was coyote presentation in September, wind farm in October. Now my coyote presentation has a problem in October, in September, they'd like to move to October. And I think my wind farm is unavailable in September, if I remember right. This way in October.
We haven't heard from non-game. It's been a year. Last heard from non-game.
Non-game?
Non-game, I'm reminded, we were 35 years in the non-game donation program. So,
Can't
kind of a
do that.
milestone.
September fishery.
Oh, you can do September? Okay, perfect.
What's the September?
Fishery, the offshore one.
Is it? Commissioner Green, did you have something you want to say?
My whole thing on that was we had put that list together a while back and we haven't gotten a presentation on any of it. Yeah, I think that maybe right now the commission votes if they want on the next three. So let's work off of that list. That was something these commissioners was asked for.
Hang on, I can just be
Yeah,
that you. Yeah,
okay,
it's in
thank
there.
you. I appreciate that.
So the wind farm is going to be in September?
Right now, yeah, that's what Sheree said, she could do September.
What's in August?
Fisheries, right? Am I right? Fish habitat?
How long we already had a fish habitat?
It's the fish habitat fund discussion. After the presentation that I had done on the electrofishing equipment, there was some discussion about wanting to know more about the fish habitat account and how that money is utilized and that type of stuff. So that was our plan. We don't have to. Just throwing it out there. It is field season.
Did you have anything in the hopper for October?
The coyotes.
The coyotes, definitely in October. Okay. There's been quite an outcry for that one.
How's the question?
Commissioner Hodges?
So timing on the powder mill or capital improvement conversation, what's the appropriate time for that, you think?
I'd like to finish the settlement we're working on with EPA before we have a public discussion.
So too early to put a date on when that conversation might be able to happen?
Yeah, you know, if you'd have asked me a month ago, I'd have told you we'd be done by now, but we've had a couple delays in the process.
You mentioned something to me once about an executive session on.
An executive session with Chris Aslan to go over some of the details.
That's relative
August.
to August.
Yeah. Prior, 11 o'clock.
Commissioner Drew?
I have requested a few of these, but on the forestry management and upland game, those could be combined as one. My question is ultimately about forestry management and our plan as related to upland game. So instead of spreading that over two presentations, that's one
Will that be conducted by the game division? Mr. Barker?
Yep. It'll be a combination.
Maybe one of the
Jim.
resident commissioners could sit on the farm management.
Well, only if they ask me.
The question is more of like, what's the long-term plan of like how we decide to cut our forest for upland land? That's the question.
Commissioner Caven.
Exactly.
With respect to that, and, you know, all joking aside, I would say that if the game division, wildlife division makes that presentation, I know that when we had a meeting in Bridgewater, New Hampshire, Jim Oler made a presentation, all right? And Jim obviously is completely tied to all of that activity and, you know, the short films he's produced and that we can go and look at on, you know, on the website. But maybe a little more in-depth explanation of how the relationships are between Fish and Game, okay, the Division of Forest and Lands, okay, assisting in timber sale programs, the discussions that occur, okay, by the kind of the management team, if you will, and the prescriptions that are provided for a given property, and then the receipts from that. What portion of those receipts actually stay with Fish and Game? What is shared with over at the Division of Forest and Lands? You know, I think maybe I think it would be really helpful if it was presented in some detail so that AJ wouldn't be happy that a bunch of trees were cut and a bunch of grouse and woodcock showed up. You know what, I think, and it wouldn't have to be a day-long presentation. I think they could really hit some bullet points.
I think Dan and Jill Kilborn, can give a lot of information on some of the cuts that they've done.
It's a soup-like property.
Yeah, Jill would have been able
Jill
to, but
left
Jill's,
after she retired.
She did?
she didn't retire,
Didn't
she took a
retire.
position in Vermont.
Yeah,
She lives in Vermont, so it's
I gotta
closer.
speak to her.
yeah, we lost her.
Too bad.
Oh my God, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair? Okay. Commissioner Temple.
Is it the intent of some of our discussion here with this to pick 3 or 4 goals, if I might say?
Yeah, we're up to October right now. Don't mess with October, because I want Kyle to come in. But, and it sounds like wind farm is quite important as well. August is fish habitat. I would say it'd be wise to start in November, December, and January, maybe pick 3 to run with, out of that list. She beat you.
I was gonna make a recommendation, if we solidify the next 3 months, we can give commissioners an opportunity to revisit the list, send that out again, provide additional thoughts, and then we can kind of move forward in a 3-month chunk
Kind of like a plan to me.
window.
What's the commission think?
It would be better not, you want to revisit this. I would think you'd want to be making your decision in September to give this, I mean, it's not fair to the staff to give them 30 days notice for a presentation.
Exactly.
Right, so
so
it'd be
if
good
we
to,
plan 3-month chunks at a time with
Yeah.
enough time.
yeah.
But if we come back for next, we do this, send out the requests, we come back in September, we need to find November, December, January, where we take something for November already from the list that we have, so that we can give staff more planning time for December and January.
Well, it sounds like August, September, October, kind of solidified.
Yep.
So you're talking November, December, January.
I think Scott wants
Right.
more than 30-day notice.
Yeah, I just want more than a
November's
30-day notice, so like, I guess what I'm suggesting is if you want to set one every month, that's fine, like you're suggesting. You know, yes, set November today so that they'll have 90 days to get to.
Want to do a rolling one, like next month we would pick December's So we've got our 3 picked, and just each month we add on like a rolling update.
Just to give staff enough time to, it's not like they're gonna spend the next 90 days working on it, it's just they're gonna find time in the next 90 days to get it done. That's
So who's gonna recommend November? Commissioner Green?
I'd like to recommend the area terrain,
Alteration.
the alteration of terrain for November.
What's the commission feel about that?
I'll second that.
We'll take a vote and go with it. Any discussion on AOT or whatever the hell it is?
Eric, I hope we can get some background on that. That's one I'm not real familiar with.
Yeah.
Alteration of terrain permits I've heard of.
Well, it has to do with endangered species, what now, I understand, right?
The role we play is protecting endangered and threatened species.
It's quite expensive, or it could be quite expensive to send our biologists to go and look at certain things before they issue permits to build skyscrapers. I'm generalizing.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on that for November? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, let's go to December.
I'd make a motion that we cover climate change for December.
Second,
You've heard the motion, any discussion on that?
Are you doing December today, or wait till next month?
I think we ought to do the next 3 months, give you plenty of time.
Yep.
Commissioner Hodgson.
That subject is ginormous, so do you
Yeah,
have
so-
something like a?
Yeah, the specific, I'm sorry, going off the specific of what I originally sent is climate change's impact on the department's mission, our resources, habitat, all that kind of stuff. I mean, right now with record flooding, it's a perfect example of how we prepare the department for these things.
Commissioner David.
I'm not sure, it may make it too much of a presentation, but it's worth the ask. If it were a climate change discussion / carbon discussion, because this carbon discussion is everywhere right now. And people sort of understand, you know, what that discussion is all about, but it has a great deal to do with managing vegetation, okay? And, you know, do you cut it? Don't you cut it? Old growth is absolutely necessary. For what reasons? Or old growth isn't necessary. You need, you know, a young regenerating forest to mitigate the carbon issues. So if it were possible, and it wouldn't make the presentation too lengthy, it could be a climate discussion / carbon discussion, and it could be simply explained in that presentation.
How long of a presentation does the commission want?
that one sounds like ours.
Sounds like
It
a
does.
week.
Sounds like a conference.
Yeah.
I listened to an hour of it.
I would say,
That's just my comment, an hour.
At least a half an hour discussion is going to.
yeah, 30-minute presentation, 30-minute discussion, like, we ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, and as there's been a great deal presented on this, not to this group or in this room, but, I mean, the presentation could basically focus on a list of bullet points that are like informational bullet points, and then people can ask questions.
Commissioner Hodgson. Dan?
Yeah, so I'll just say, so there's a lot of different things that could be talked about under that umbrella. If it were more specific to carbon, that would probably, we'd be pulling in Jim Ayler and potentially even people from outside the agency. So that could be difficult. Really, any of these, we could be pulling people in from outside the agency. I could also see non-game staff potentially being heavily involved in a presentation like that, and if non-game staff's putting together a presentation on AOT for November, then they would be following that right up in December the next month, and they're severely understaffed and overworked in large part because of AOT. So just some things to consider when laying these out. And again, the climate change ones, without a specific focus, it'll be really hard to kind of, I think it'd be good if you could have some consensus on the specific focus so we figure out the right people to bring in for a presentation, some of which may be outside of our agency.
Commissioner Cox, and then Commissioner Norwood.
Dan said basically 100% what I was saying, because you can go from warming freshwater temperature, ocean warm, like at the, we have to, I think, kind of take off some bite-sized pieces to that.
If I might suggest, would it make sense that one of the subcommittees is assigned the topic in general? Because this is something that affects infrastructure, funding, all these different things, whether it's carbon credits, all the way to how does flooding affect our funding, how does drought affect us, and it's an ongoing thing. To everybody's point here, there's just, it affects every part of our department. So it's 30 minutes doesn't know justice any way we cut it. So I don't know if it would make sense that one of the subcommittees, obviously the subcommittees are busy, but if there's a subcommittee where this topic makes sense, because I think the commission should be playing an active role in how we're encountering this.
Well, the committee that actually is in charge of education is government.
Oh.
But that's not what you're talking about.
No, I'm talking about the impact on our infrastructure, our funding, how we are managed game as a result of these things, how we have to plan long-term for these things. That's ultimately my ask in the first place for asking about climate change was for these things. And our role as commissioners to be informed and making decisions based on this. And to everybody's point, I don't think there's a subject in our department that isn't touched by climate change in some way.
Commissioner Green.
The way I approach it, I believe it was Commissioner DeRosa that got on that list.
Yeah.
Why don't you break it down into one subject that you feel that could be handled within a half hour and approach it that way? Take it piece by piece instead of a whole big package.
And don't let John add items to it either.
Yeah, well, I just think to the point is I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that we should have a presentation on a period. That's the person who.
I guess my question would be, what was your meaning behind that's what I
It was
wanted to
this,
know.
is that as a department, we need to face climate change, and how as commissioners are we helping to plan for those problems. That's why I brought it up as a topic, is to initiate how are we, and I know the department is planning for these things, so it's not meant to judge the department, but it's meant to say as commissioners, we should have a role, because John's right when he says that carbon credits is a massive issue that directly impacts how our private land forests are being managed right now. That's a huge habitat question for our state. There's, water temperature changes affecting fish populations or our fisheries. I mean, there's just all sorts of different things that, as a commission, I think that we should have an active lens of saying, how are these things affecting us?
From a presentation standpoint, the problem is, I mean, we can do a really high-level climate change thing, but it's almost useless.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, I agree.
What happens is as different topics come up, I mean, maybe we need to, get staff to say, oh, and because of climate change, we're making these changes.
Yep.
As far as in the different presentations, because like, for example, Cherie's folks are working on, your sandbird down there, I know I just butchered the name of it. No,
Salt marsh sparrow.
salt marsh sparrow, and the changes that climate change are bringing forth and where this animal may or may not be located in the future, and what we're gonna have to do as far as salt marshes go. I mean, that's a whole topic unto itself. I mean, we've been about a year on that, working with multiple states, agencies, okay, 2 years, I lose track of time. But that's been an ongoing project for 2 years, it's been out there. Now, a report on that maybe might help talk about climate change a little bit. Some of the work that Cherie does, you have fish that are showing up in the ocean that that didn't used to show up in our oceans. Presentation on that, but to sit here and have a climate change presentation and go through everything the department's working on right now, we're not gonna pay your hotel bills.
Well, and that's, to my point is what I'm saying is that I think my expression in saying this for a topic was that this commission needs to play an active role in the discussion of climate change and not as a 30-minute presentation. It needs to be an ongoing thing. And how, as a commission, can we address that? Is it through one of our subcommittees? So that we're actively keeping tabs on it. So that type of information can get forward. She can get the support of the commission on issues that she's having, or, you know, different parts of the state, or, you know. So my thing is me bringing the topic up in the first place when I originally emailed Ray on it was to initiate the fact that I think the commission needs to play an active role in climate change constantly, not just in a 30-minute presentation. And I agree, there's no sense to have a presentation on it. I just think it needs to be a constant topic for us as the commission.
Your comment on carbon capture is a big issue, but it's a much smaller issue, and then how it plays out and changes to our habitat. Massachusetts, have you seen their proposal on state lands down there?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So that's gonna have a huge impact on the work that they're doing down there. Now, Dan, do you know if Mass Fish and Game was excluded from that? I know for a while they were. I don't know whether they swept in at the end or not.
I don't know for certain.
Okay. So maybe that's something, we have those folks come up and give a presentation, but that means you're bringing in people from outside of Fish and Game. We were told not to do that.
Commissioner Hayes.
To try to take another stab at this and simplify. I guess for me, for myself, as for informational purposes, to get a Cliff Notes presentation. Cliff Notes, those are the things we all grabbed in college when we didn't get the homework done. So you get the details, okay, and just basically a periodic update from discussions that are going on with respect. These discussions are not going away, and they're going to extend from New Hampshire to the region to the feds, and there are people they're in discussions about this all the time. And it's, you know, it's a matter of maybe of just simply being updated with, you know, how Fish and Game is monitoring these discussions, and a few examples of what other states or other regions are doing in addressing this. Okay, which I think you know, if we had periodic updates. You know, it seems like we've morphed this request into something that's, you know, reasonable maybe, or more reasonable. Maybe that could be done, subject to discussion that you would have with staff to see if, again, it could be just an outline of where discussions are currently. And this whole thing is just going to continue to evolve. And we could have periodic updates.
I think we just handled your environment request.
Yeah, so I'm actually gonna take my motion off the table to make December the climate change topic, given what John has articulated very well, is that I'm requesting that we get regular updates on how climate change is affecting our environment.
I'll entertain your motion to remove that, because I think that's a good recommendation. So now we've got December wide open. We have December. Jim, have you got anything on the Seacoast that you would like to have us know all about between you and Sheree?
Well, I sent an email to Sheree last week concerning the increase in the amount of lobsters that are being caught with shell disease. Now, I know that's probably some kind of environmental issue going on, but I don't understand. But I had one trap the other day, I told, had over a dozen lobsters in it. Every one of them had shell disease. And some of the shells are so soft, you can poke your fingers through them. And I'm not sure what the overall impact's gonna be for future generations of lobsters. If they grow out of that when they shed their shells, I'm not sure how that can come up as a discussion for all this.
That was interesting because Market Basket had soft shell lobsters on sale a couple weeks ago, and I was like, soft shell lobsters? Can they sell it?
Soft shell, that's a different
Is that a
category than
difference?
walks of a shell disease.
Okay.
Okay, you have December. What would you like to have in December? I'm not gonna drop this ball, so we gotta fill these slots here.
So can I make a suggestion for December?
Which
So
one?
how about pending a conversation with the business division, a presentation on license, sale, trends, that they're seeing in our state. Maybe also to have a look into what other states are doing to promote license sales and encourage recruitment and those sorts of issues.
That's a motion? Is there a second?
I'll second that.
The motion and seconded to have December be, presentation by the business division.
Well, it would be, I think, co-business in Nicola, public affairs,
So
for marketing.
Maybe we can tighten it up, and if you'd like, I can talk to the staff about what the topic might be, bring it back at the next meeting, but in general, it would be license sales.
Right, those two things, one, license sales is business,
Yeah, tactics.
and tactics to promote license sales
Yeah.
is public relations. It's not that hard.
No, that'd be a good topic.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I wasn't even on that list.
Oh, no, Katie.
John,
You are now.
December.
I wanted to escape.
we got December down. January.
No, I think we could
Yeah,
stop.
yeah, I don't think we can do January yet.
You know, you wanna stay
I
in
think
this
next month
calendar
we'll talk
year?
about January, and then add each month. If we add each month, then we kind of stay ahead.
All right,
Yeah.
all right. Commissioner Cable.
Can I ask a question? And I think now that the list is long enough, but I think one of these was going to be a fisheries discussion. Is that-
That's fishery habitat.
So I would ask this question, and hopefully Diane might answer it. Something that is of real interest to myself and others is this process of the placement of structure in streams and projects that we have done, participated in, either by ourselves or with partners. Is it possible to include an example of one of those projects that we have done, placing structure in streams?
That will all be part of that
It will be.
presentation, absolutely.
And would there ever be an opportunity, if there is going to be a future project,
There'll be lots of future projects in here.
so to go and observe it happen?
Absolutely.
Thank
There's
you.
also a video on our YouTube channel.
I'm sorry?
There's also a video on our YouTube channel all about it.
Right, okay, and I know that they have occurred, a couple of them in my region, but I learned about them too late before, because I was interested. I mean, we used to get arrested for putting material in streams, okay? And now you're a hero if you do, so.
Well, it's
Do it with
permitted.
control. with control.
Permitted is the key word there.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we beat that horse to death. We're out of information items now, we're going to committee structure, legislative committee, Commissioner, what's your name?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
right.
you just call me hey, you. Yeah. Thank you, Chairman Stoll. We spent our time this morning reviewing bills that were retained for the second half of the biennium in the legislature. We had one change to our position, and I would like to make a motion to change our position from no position to oppose on House Bill 650 FN relative to the prohibiting suspension of driver's license due to non-payment of fines or fees. Can I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. So the reason we changed this is because this conflicts directly with Senator Waters' bill that he sponsored at our request called Senate Bill 13, in which if Senate Bill 13 was also retained, that it would suspend a driver's license for non-payment of search and rescue expenses. So if House Bill 650 comes to fruition, we lose our ability to, if Senate Bill 13 passes, to collect our search and rescue fees from recalcitrant people who were rescued, but they don't want to pay the bill. So I'd like the committee would like the rest of the commission's support on this change that we oppose. House Bill 650.
You heard the motion, you heard the second to oppose House Bill 650. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you. Just an update on the rules. That was the other part of our meeting we spent time on. We postponed review of FIS 502, which is live fishing bait, till our August meeting, as well as 1205, which is youth pheasant event. So we'll address those at our meeting and have a recommendation at the August meeting for the full commission. And that's it. Highlights.
Government Committee, Commissioner Caven.
We have not met.
Sustainability and strategic planning, Commissioner Hodgson.
So I collected all the stakeholder letters. I got the last of them today, and the other ones that were mailed in to us. And we'll meet as a committee on August 10th in the afternoon. What I had said to the committee when we talked about scheduling the meeting was that my intention is to go through all the responses and group by question all of those responses. So I'll have for the committee a summary of all the responses for question 1, and then question 2, and then so on. So that'll be my deliverable to the committee. We'll meet on the 10th to review.
Okay, thank you. Resources and Infrastructure, Commissioner Temple.
Yes, we have not met, and welcome, Mark, as being the new chair. Glad to support you in the way I can. I did have a couple of other comments, and I'm not sure if I should raise them now or wait until the end when we do our commission.
Comments about your committee or something else?
Well, one of them is about infrastructure.
Go for it.
I know that over on Lake Sunapee, our wild goose property has been a real struggle in that we're unable to really get the political willpower to move forward with that property. It's unfortunate, but that's sometimes that's the way things are. But I just wanted to put it in perspective, if I could. Access onto Lake Sunapee for the sportsmen or anybody else that registers or votes in New Hampshire can be difficult. And some of us have been there and seen what's available at the Lake Sunapee State Beach, which is a public access. You might get your canoe in there, certainly get a kayak in there. You won't get your bass fishing boat in there, I can tell you that. It just doesn't happen. But Lake Sunapee, I think, is around 4,000 acres, state water. On the north end, George's Mills, extremely difficult to get a boat in there. If you get it in there, that's fine, but you don't have much of a place to park, if any. One, because you're probably not a member of that community, so you don't have a sticker to park. If you go down to Sunapee Harbor, it's a dual ramp, put 2 in there. A lot of boats tie up in Sunapee Harbor. Of course, you have the tour boat, or 2 that operate right there. If you get your boat in, you might be parking quite a ways away. So meanwhile, your boat is tied up. There's other sportsmen or sports people that want to get in there. Of course, they can't until you come back in your car and move your boat. If you move around the southern part of the lake, Newberry has access, but it's a private access. You don't have access to Newberry. So of 4,000 acres of public state water, great fishing resource. It's extremely difficult to get on that lake. So I was trying to draw an analogy. AJ, if there was 4,000 acres of prime grouse hunting and woodcock land that the state owned, and you could not get on it, you might be concerned.
Absolutely.
If we go over to the seacoast and say we had 4,000 acres of prime duck hunting area, but you can't access it. Can't get on it, can't get near it. If you can get on the prime duck hunting area, you may not be able to get there because you can't park your boat anywhere, or you can't park anywhere. So what I'm wondering is if wild goose can't go anywhere, if we can't seem to get any traction at all, which has been difficult in the last 30 years, 20 years, or whatever the number is, 30 years?
20 plus.
Yeah, 20 plus years. Maybe, just maybe, we could begin to give further consideration to the state park. Now, a lot of people are angst about that because you have beach goers there. It's very active, state park. And attached to that is a stream that you can get a canoe on, or a small 12-footer maybe. Bring your waders because you might get hung up and have to get out. But maybe, just maybe, we can look at improving that somehow. I don't know the answer to that, but again, there's 4,000 acres of a beautiful lake. People pay their hunting and fishing licenses. They pay for their boat registrations and a host of other things. And I'll get all that if you can't get on it. I'm not saying you can't get on it, because you can, but it certainly is not very inviting when you look at the beautiful access onto, is it Newfound Lake, Bristol? Beautiful access there. I know we're looking at taking on this other piece, and we did one way up in the north country. But just think of that if you're a deer hunter, or a sportsman of any type, or a sports person of any type, and you got 4,000 acres of prime land, and you can't park and you can't get on it. It's open. You just can't get there. Use it. And I'm hoping that someday, maybe through the infrastructure committee, we can revisit this somehow. I know there's been other commissioners that have been to the site. I know Chris, you've poked around a lot. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here. It's a fact. And this is one of your largest freshwater resources in the whole state of New Hampshire. And you can't get to it. And I know there's a lot of politics here, and I don't care to go there. I understand that fully. I'm just looking for a way to maybe look for alternatives that maybe could be explored. Whether it's improving the stream, and I understand it's got rainbow smelt in it, and all kinds of stuff. Everybody likes to salmon fish right off the beach in the spring, because that's where the bait fish are. But I'm hoping that someday we as a commission can either move forward or just say, hey, it ain't gonna happen. But anyway, that's my yearly speech about Lake Summit boating access. And I know the undertones, and I know there's a lot of sportsmen that 20 years or more go on to committee meetings and hearing this and hearing that, and have just pointed it out. It's going to happen, but that may be the case. Anyway, enough said. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, public engagement and education. Commissioner DeRosa.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Land Management and Advisory Committee. Lake Management and Advisory Committee. Commissioner White.
We have not held a meeting since February, and it's kind of a roll call meeting when they put an invitation out, maybe It's not a regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay, Natural Rivers Management Advisory Committee, Commissioner Hodgson.
Yeah, I would same update. There has not been a meeting of that committee since we last met.
Okay, old business. Anybody got any old business? Seeing none. New business.
I don't know.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cable.
It's interesting, as a commissioner, it seems like people must talk to each other because I get asked the same question 3 times in a week. It's like, so the people are talking to each other. I've been approached 3 times about law enforcement and arrests that occur or fines that occur. And because the world has changed, I think there's no longer any court reporters. So when the bad guy gets caught, it's never in the newspaper anymore. And I would say that the 3 people that did talk to me, they are license holders and they're in good standing. And very simply, they said, we would like to know that the bad guys get caught and they get fined. So I guess on their behalf and on mine, I'm curious to know why, when someone gets caught for jacking a beer, okay, or any violation, okay, and if it's a serious one, shooting multiple deer, shooting too many ducks or geese, or taking too many fish, or breaking our fish and game laws, why isn't there public notice of that so that in addition to paying out of their checkbook, they embarrass themselves as well? And I think it's a legitimate question, but it's probably a good answer why we don't hear about it.
Well, if I could, it's a double-edged sword, I can tell you from many years of doing this. It can blow up in your face as well. And so we have come, I think most law enforcement agencies have come to rely on the press picking that stuff up in court. Our courts have changed dramatically. They're overbooked, they're understaffed, and so I think the information isn't as easily available to the public as it used to be. It used to be you go in and pick up the court log and you'd have it all there. They don't even create that anymore. So, and we have gone back and forth internally, the division has, on what to release and when. Because you've either got to release everybody or release nobody. Otherwise, you're picking on individuals when you do that. The other challenge that we face is you need to be really careful about releasing it when they've been charged, because they're innocent until proven guilty. When the press calls, if it's something I can relay information on, and they do that on occasion, we do that. I recently was looking to do that on a big case, but politics kind of got involved in that, and so the door got shut on it. They didn't want it released for a couple of pretty valid reasons, so it didn't go out. I'm assuming it will eventually, and that'll be a case that will be out. But we've kind of shied away from doing it because it brings more negativity than it does positive. It's been my experience. We could do it. We could do it on occasion. I just don't know if that's in our best interest.
Up in my neck of the woods, I have 2 newspapers that report on court and all the fish and game violations that are in there.
I think it's interesting and it pleases me that the good guys and gals really want to know that the bad guys are getting caught, and they feel as though it's almost like, well, I don't care if they paid a $74 fine or a $740 fine. I want them to be embarrassed when they go to the post office, that we all know what they did. So there's some interest in the public knowing that. And I can understand in today's world, there are some details that just don't allow you to just...
You have to be careful.
Just share all of that, It doesn't seem right, but... That speeding ticket I got 25 years ago, they put that in the paper, so.
Well, Kevin, you can attest, we have 2 days of license suspension a month.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, they're making cases. They're making cases at a volume that in my 30 years I've never seen like this past year. They are working hard. It's a quiet bunch. They're doing it different than we did it, but they're making some great cases. They're making, the other thing, they're shifting gears. It's kind of interesting to watch is they're doing it using methods and technology that you and I couldn't spell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're searching cell phones and cameras, and I'm a little leery of advertising that a lot because that results in legislative changes.
Yep.
Because if they start seeing people getting picked up because you're searching phones, they'll start tightening that up. So it's all those factors that you have to be careful of. But I can tell you, they are making cases. There's no lack of that, and there's no lack of criminals. We could probably do more of that. I kind of steered away from it because of the negative. You get an awful lot of negative press about it, to be honest with you. There's a lot of sportsmen and women out there that want to see it. There's an awful lot of people that will find fault. There's Monday morning quarterbacks everywhere, and they'll find fault with it. It's bringing a lot of negative stuff to the agency, so I kind of got away from it. But even search and rescue does that, John. If I put in a post on, we post all the search and rescue, and you'd be surprised at the comments on both sides of that issue. There's really strong feelings on both sides.
Because you do name who you carried off the mountain.
Absolutely.
And you know, if they were up there with flip-flops on and a pair of shorts instead of prepared.
But we're careful how we just report it. I don't find fault with it. It would be very different if I put my opinion in there. But you still get a lot of both sides of it. Some people are really happy that you're doing that, and other people are like, why is that happening? Why can't we get away from that? So there's two sides to that,
And make a suggestion, Mr. Chair.
What's that?
I just, as a compromise, maybe we should just post the violations. The successful prosecutions, what they are.
Yeah.
Somehow just say that and not actually name names and places, but just that would let people know, we had, in June, we had 6, deer poaching violations. We successfully prosecuted and say what the person lost, as a result of the fine and those sort of things. And then that might be a way of doing it without, publishing names and getting into that controversy.
Colonel, to be honest with you, I'm kind of shocked that the office was issuing summonses to the degree that you're talking about.
Yeah.
You couldn't pay me to put that uniform on again.
No.
I mean, those officers, and I'll say it, these damn ATVs have taken up all of their time.
Yeah.
Just picture this situation just a little bit. You have an ATV accident. Pick 2 machines that hit each other, going crazy like they do all the time.
Yeah.
Now you got, if it's a 2-seater, each of them a 2-seater, that's 4 people right there. Somebody's at fault for that accident. That officer has to go to that scene, investigate that scene. Now these aren't US Route 3 that they're doing this on. It's some damn trail someplace off in the woods. So now they gotta get there. First of all, their primary mission there is to get the injured to help. Then they're going to investigate the report without damaging the scene to find out who's at fault. There's going to be lawsuits there up the Union. If that officer doesn't do a very good job dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's on that report, that's going to be in court probably down the road 1, 2, 3, 4 years. Who's at fault? The officer. These guys are doing more on ATVs and less on checking fishermen and hunters out there than I ever did. We didn't have ATVs when I was a fish cop. We had those damn snow machines, I'll call them the same damn thing. They take up an awful lot of time, and there's an awful lot of lawsuits pertaining to those ATVs. And I'm totally amazed that they can still go out and do some whole fish and game work.
Yeah, it's hard to do. Between that and rescues come in volumes that they never did either. They come 7 nights a week now, so It's, you're right, it's there, we are getting our bang for our buck, I can tell you that. We get a dedicated staff that work pretty hard at what they do.
You haven't got enough men either. But
I don't have anywhere near enough, but the Governor Davis full more, which I'm gonna publicly say was gracious. That's the most we've had, since the 70s, so that's gonna be a help. 48, you know, we're sitting in a city that has 60 people covering the city, and we have 48 covering the entire state, so you need about double what we got. I'll take the 48 and be very grateful for that, especially if I can hire them at the caliber of the last two we just hired, because those are good kids and they work hard, so.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yeah, I appreciate your
I'm gonna
comments.
get you to you, Mr. Thomas, saving you for last.
I appreciate what your comments are, Chair. And it's the same thing for people to liken it to fire departments. Fire departments fight very few fires and a tremendous amount of emergency rescues. There's not a fire there, but every time there's an incident, not a fire call, not a burning building, not a brush fire, very, very few. But when you look at the emergency service they provide, liken it to snowmobiles and ATVs, 90% of the calls that go out of the fire department typically have to do with an accident, an incident. Somebody needs an emergency service there. It doesn't have anything to do with fighting fires.
They work very well with the officers.
Yeah. Same thing.
Jim, the floor is yours.
Okay. Over the last few weeks, I've been getting a lot of concerned fishermen talking to me about the New York clam dredge that's operating off the shore of Hampton and Northampton Beach. There's been a lot of email traffic between the Advisory Commission on Marine Fisheries, between the Fish and Game. The director here also received a emailed recently from the New Hampshire Commercial Fishermen Association, all about the conflicts that are going on now between lobstermen and this clam dredge. It seems like over the last few weeks, the clamming effort has increased. And the lobstermen's concern here are the damage to habitat, the potential for injury or death to various marine species, especially lobsters, who travel along the sandy bottom that's being exploited by the clam dredge in search of prey to harden their shells. They go after crabs this time of year on a sandy bottom. It's helpful in them hardening their shells after they shed their shells. And also the loss of traditional fishing grounds that these guys normally would fish. Now they don't dare put traps in those areas simply because this clam dredge is operating where they would normally fish. So they're not interested in going through any kind of formal process of waiting 60 days for a public hearing to get some kind of action taken to stop this vessel, because there's been requests to have a season for this dredge to operate, not including the months where the lobster fishery is present in that area. So they've asked me, because of the position I'm in, to try to get something done to stop this clam dredge from operating for the rest of the summer at least, up into the middle of fall. Now, the only thing I could find within the rules and regulations was a code 21149-2, which says the executive director can open and close waters by taking the marine species by mobile gear, consistent with sound conservation and management practices. So we were hoping that that ordinance could be invoked to immediately stop that clam dredge from operating off the shores of Hampton and Northampton in order for the lobstermen to be able to put their traps there and try to earn a living somewhat. They're concerned about the damage of habitat already and whether or not those grounds would be productive or not. So that's what I've been asked to come here today and speak about, is trying to get this clam dredge from New York to be this cease operations. I'm not sure if the commission can make that decision or not.
What was that RSA reference that you said?
It's like 2/11/49,
A.
Roman numeral 2.
How far
It's
out?
also under A.
This clam dredge is right near shore. He's anywhere between 200 yards to a half mile off the beach.
Mr. Chairman, could we hear from the chief of Marine?
Yeah, I thought Commissioner Titone might call upon
Yeah,
Mr. Marconi.
we had the last advisory meeting, which was in June, there was some discussion about meeting with the vessel operators to determine whether or not they'd be amenable to discontinuing operation this time of year. I don't think that meeting ever took place that I'm aware of. And we didn't have a July meeting to talk about it.
Thank you for coming, Gino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Gino Marconi, I'm the chairman of the Marine Fisheries Advisory Committee. Nothing to do with me being on the Port Authority. Yes, I came up here today because the last few weeks there's been a lot of emails going around the waterfront about this clam boat. At the last Marine Fisheries Advisory Committee, there was some talk about it. There was the concerns that Commissioner Titone has brought up. There was even one of the members that started to make a motion, but it didn't go through because some of the other members of the committee felt that they did not have enough information in order to make a recommendation to this body here. How it was left at that meeting was that Chief of Marine Fisheries and I would have some continued discussion about it. We would have a teleconference or whatever with the owner of the boat, which we did. We talked about a potential season, what the department or the biologists would think the issues were, particularly going around the spawning season of different species of fish, in particular winter flounder on the beach area. We talked about what that potential season would do for their business and their viability as a business, because the hat that I wear as the director of the Port Authority, my statutory charge is to promote the development of the saltwater fisheries. Again, within the boundary lines of what's ecologically good. And we did have some discussion about the alleged gear conflicts with this clam dredge, which I understand law enforcement's looking into. I'm not the investigator here. So the intent of us having that conversation was that Cherie and I would take the notes from that meeting, and we would go back to the Marine Fisheries Advisory Committee, give them what we know, try to get more information to them. One of the questions that was raised is how much of this product is being distributed in New Hampshire, because if I may just go into a little bit of detail, Mr. Chairman, the majority of these clams that are being harvested, they're the big sea surf clams, and they're being caught in areas that are close to the fishery because they're within a certain distance of the outfall of the sewage treatment plants. They cannot be harvested for food, but they can be harvested for bait, and this is the bait that the party boats use. So one of the questions came up is, well, party boat industry that we have in New Hampshire along the seacoast area, how much of that product may be supporting that? So these are questions that the members of the committee have relayed to me. I'm trying to get some of that information together and working with Cherie as closely as we do. We'll report back to that committee. They have not taken a stand on this issue because at the last meeting they felt that they didn't have enough information. And that's why I came here today, was to relay what that committee is talking about. Any questions?
And we take our lead from you folks. You folks, the main intent of your commission is to advise us on what you recommend should happen down there.
That's correct. And we don't have a recommendation at this time.
Do you have any idea when you will have a recommendation?
We'll probably try to set up a meeting as soon as we can finish getting our information together.
Okay.
I understand Commissioner Titone's concerned. I'm sure his ears are ringing like mine are. This is a tough time of the year to do a lot of things down on the seacoast because of the other activities going on. I have not, the conversations I've had with these people have been very professional, talking about, you know, what they're doing, and they have said time and time again, they don't want to cause any issues with people. They don't want to have any gear conflicts with anyone. There have been times when they're using our facilities that I've seen on our security cameras that they may not be tied up in the proper manner. A phone call and I get, yes sir, I'll move my boat right away. That's all I can tell you at this point in time, sir.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah.
Commissioner Hawes?
Or
Go ahead.
did you want to?
No.
Can, whether it be, you know, the Colonel or Sheree, help us understand like the current regulatory framework? Like when are they here? What are they allowed? What licensing are they required to have? Are there harvest limits? And can you give us that framework?
Yeah. I have to do a little research.
Do you mind if I
Not
jump
at
in
all.
on this one? So, they're allowed to be here, they're allowed to fish, they, need a commercial saltwater license in order to, be able to harvest and sell. They are fishing, on sandy bottom. Sandy bottom is something that's very dynamic. So, if you think that you're gonna have some damage to sandy bottom, you might, in a short period of time, until the next group of waves come through and change the dynamic of sandy bottom again. Surf clams, variety of surf clams like that sandy bottom. We have had this fishery occur since mid-90s, where boats come in, they dredge for a period of time. They kind of get to the point where it's sparse in the population and they leave and go fish somewhere else. And about 5 years later, the population is rebuilt and ready to be harvested again. So this is not something that's unusual. It's our understanding that there has been no gear conflict between lobster gear that has been placed. They have dredged up some derelict gear, but they have not dredged up any sort of active gear. They're in generally 30 feet of water, so, and on the sand. So it's not prime lobster habitat unless they're migrating out. So in the fall, then you would probably see a lot more interaction with other species other than your clams. They have essentially fished through several months. Recently, it has been October through December, January, which of course is when lobster gear really is not present in state waters to the degree that it is during the summertime. This time of year, yes, they have also fished April, May, June, July, and in fact, this particular vessel continues to fish through into August, he plans. But he's staying in shallow waters where there's no gear being set, again, on this sort of substrate and habitat that the surf clams are on. I'm still working through data with Gino to find out where the commerce is happening. If commerce is both in New Hampshire and New York, or if it's all going to New York. I'm not sure we can get to that degree of specificity yet. And a lot of this information is confidential because we go with the rule of 3. If there's less than 3 entities involved in a harvest or in dealing from New Hampshire, then we do not share that data. We could just kind of give you some generalities. And because this is essentially one business that is harvesting over the last 3 years, we wouldn't be able to give you specifics on land use and such. Did I address all your questions?
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
If I go fishing for striping, I need a saltwater fishing license, right?
You need a recreational saltwater license, not a commercial saltwater license.
Okay, so they have to have a commercial saltwater license, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Tillman?
Okay, I'm gonna disagree with Cherie about lobstermen, the way they're fishing. Traditionally, this time of year, we're fishing really in tight, on sandy bottom. The sandy bottom this time of year, quite good for lobster. There may be no activity in there now because of the threat of loss of gear, should it be in the way of the dredge. Now, whether or not the product is being sold in state or not, a week ago, I was at the Yankee Co-op getting bait, and I went into the cooler. And in the cooler, there were a vast number of 5-gallon pails and 2 exotics. These are large refrigerator type vats full of sea clams. So I asked the manager, are we buying clams off the dredge? And he informed me, no, their truck had broke down and they needed a place to store their clams until their truck was repaired so they can put them on the road and give them to their customers out of state. So I don't believe much, if any of their product is being sold in state. So it's not benefiting New Hampshire economically as the lobster fishermen and the businesses that are supported by the lobster fishermen are supporting New Hampshire businesses. So again, I'm just, as the voice of the fishing community, they'd like to see this activity stop as soon as possible. They don't want to go through any formal process of waiting for public hearing, 60-day public hearing, because by then it's too late, the damage is already done.
Commissioner Howard?
It sounds like, and please correct me if I haven't pieced it together right, but it sounds like there's been no season, no take limit, because it kind of managed itself in that, hey, this one boat comes every 5 years for a short period of time. What has changed that now, like, the frequency magnitude is different because maybe we got lucky in not having management because there was no interest or whatever, but something's changed and now it sounds like it's different than what it used to be. Do you understand my question?
Yeah, I can't indicate what's different.
No.
Because this is, again, has occurred periodically since the mid-90s. So it's the fishing community that is charged with, with their concerns.
There is a restriction on mobile gear activity through April 15th, but unfortunately the law states that's only limited to scallops. So the fishermen are thinking like a clam and a scallop might be kind of closely related, and why can't we get that restriction from dredging on mobile gear? April 15 will also apply to sea clams that are being dredged now. It's mobile gear.
Most of mobile gear in the state is closed, and you can't utilize otter trawls, for example, for finfish and such, but there are allowances for mobile gear for some shellfish species.
I have lots more questions, Mr. Chairman. So I hear from Commissioner Titone, there's a stakeholder group that wants something done and fear that it's going to continue in a kind of devastating way, if I use my own words. So pros and cons of, hey, let's take time to figure it out, all while the resource is being harvested and this is happening, or hey, timeout? Like, isn't there a way to hit pause? Because we want to make sure that we're doing the right things, because at the risk of bringing up another controversial issue, we can't scuba dive for lobsters because it's going to destroy the habitat and it's going to have negative effects. But in just this discussion, I picture this big boat dragging and dredging all along the ocean bottom, and there's a disconnect for me. And all my commissioners, I say consistency probably at least once a meeting, right? And so it seems a little inconsistent. And so just understanding like the pause and wait and pros and cons of that versus like how do we take a pause and make sure we're making the right decisions for all the resources.
Was there a question in there?
Yeah, how do we make that decision? Like how long do we wait versus like isn't there has to be a mechanism to do a pause while we figure things out.
I have to fall back on Marty or Kevin to find out if they know of any other rules that would place a pause. Right now, I don't see any emergency action needed for this particular
On the
species.
biological side, you can't justify an emergency action.
Correct.
That's the problem.
But
And
this
there's nothing,
21149, to me, it doesn't even, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be an emergency action in order for the executive director to close waters. If there's a not sound conservation and management practices going on.
So I think that that's the reason why we're kind of moving forward with the advisory committee and having some of these discussions at that advisory committee meeting.
if I may make one comment, Mr. Chairman, these guys have been doing this now for over 3 years. Now all of a sudden, in the last few months, this is just like boiled up, and I don't know why. I'm sure there were some personalities involved in it. But again, I don't know if there was a gear conflict. I don't know. I'm not, as I said, I'm not the investigator. There's been rumor of it. I don't know where that investigation is.
This is the first year that the activity or the exploitation of the sea clams has taken place during the summer months, from what we can tell.
No, it has occurred during summer months before.
We know exactly when, which years
This
they
would have
were.
been in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s.
I've been fishing lobsters from the mid-60s, and I don't ever recall a clam dredge operating within state waters during summer months.
We've got records.
Mr. Chair, I consulted with our legal coordinator. I mean, it's a possibility, if you can do a citizen's petition, anyone can, to change a rule, try to do it through rules. If you can find an applicable rule, we have to respond with 30-day response. I mean, that's another option to take a look at the rules and see if you can change a rule that will affect this clam dredge. Just a suggestion.
I'm just looking at this from 30,000 feet again. We got two sides saying two different things here. We got the chairman of the Atlantic States Fisheries Advisory Commission, which their main, I'm probably going to blow this, you know, but their main reason for existence is to advise us on what they think is the right thing to do down on the seacoast. We have Cherie here, who is the head of the Marine Division, and she is saying biologically she sees no danger that's going on there. I think if the director and or the law enforcement division and Commissioner Titone, you keep bringing up the RSA, which is the colonel's bailiwick. If he sees reason for an action down there, then I would think that this lies in his ballpark underneath the director. I don't think this is something that the commission needs to really get on board right now unless we have, this is just my personal opinion, unless we have something that's so glaring right in front of us that we need to act. And once we get that information, what action can we take as a commission, to be honest with you? So I'm just throwing that out for your discussion. I don't see an issue here. I personally am waiting to hear back from Mr. Marconi's group to find out what he recommends to us to take actions on this particular issue. What say you, Commissioner? Commissioner Hart?
If I may, since I was asking and firing at Sherry a lot of the questions. Based on that feedback, that Sherry does not see from a biological standpoint a need at this point for any kind of emergency reaction or emergency action, and on the law enforcement side or safety side, then that makes sense to me. And my open question would be looking to Sherry and Gino and his group if there's a recommendation for a season that comes from this, and I'll stand by for the follow-up.
Yeah, so that was part of what was presented to the advisory committee was a season that would be really outside the bounds of any sort of lobster here in state waters for the most part. But that's all part of the discussion that the advisory committee would like to have and get back to this body. Is that okay?
I do have one request into enforcement.
Yes.
On the size of the dredge.
Yeah.
There's a restriction that the maximum size of the dredge could be 48 inches in width. So some of the fishermen told me that the dredge is the size of a pickup truck. I haven't seen it, so I can't confirm how large the dredge is, but I've asked enforcement to look into that to see what the actual size of the dredge is, because if it is over 48 inches, then that would be good grounds for us to stop that activity immediately.
Who did you speak with, Commissioner?
I sent a email to Lieutenant Brown.
Okay, good. I'll follow it up, make sure that they take this.
Any further discussion by the commission on this issue? Okay. Any other new business?
I used all my airtime on that one.
You have nothing? Okay, Commissioners report. Commissioners will report on their recent activities as it relates to the Fish and Game Commission duties and responsibilities as an information item only. Any commissioner got anything they'd like to say that they've been really doing great things out there?
Well, of course I do.
I'm waiting for you.
I attended the annual Winnipesaukee Sportsman Dealer, and a very nice lady, Audrey from Swan Lake Science Center, came and brought critters by which they were famous about. And one of the critters was a possum. And she started talking about the myth that possums control the tick population. And she directed us to a 2021 study that is very in-depth. And the state library got it for me. That is not true. There's been a comprehensive ground truthing study, and it was basically bad lab procedure that led to this conclusion. Possums groom ticks off themselves, but they don't actually consume them. So anybody wants this journal article, I can provide them a copy. But it was interesting. She came, very interesting lady, very knowledgeable about the different game and non-game species. And I want to draw people's attention to the fact that James Euler had a press release a couple months ago that we have got $9.3 million in grants from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and this has been used to conserve 18 properties under the Wildlife Habitat Management Program, and this totals 12,000 acres over the last 7 years. So this is I just like singing the staff's and the department's praises, and this is a lot of land, 12,000 acres, and a lot of money. 9.3 that came from federal coffers and not our appropriation. So, and lastly, a lot of people don't realize if you don't hunt, fish, or trap, you can still help us out by contributing to the non-game fund. And I got this nice little sticker that informs me that it is in its 35th year this year. So we have an anniversary. So if you'd like to help out the non-game fund, please get out your checkbook or credit card. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Temple?
Yeah, I had a couple of phone calls over the last month or so, and specifically with respect to the Winnipesaukee Fishing Derby. I know it was canceled this year. I don't go to that, I don't know much about it. But there was a question came up about whether or not it's dead for the future, or is there something going on in Winnipesaukee that we need to be concerned with as people who buy hunting and fishing licenses. And I don't expect it today, but maybe it's sometime in the future, if we just get a quick update on.
Diane, can you speak to that?
I can.
Yeah.
So it is canceled this year because of declines in adult salmon in Winnipesaukee. There's been a downward trend for many years. In the last few years, it's been really drastic. Other anglers have noticed it as well. We've received reports from various guides. And so as a result, in an effort to be proactive and try to restore the adult population in Winnipesaukee, we've not approved the right to have, or not permitted, the Winnipesaukee Derby, and then also plans to cancel Salmon Sunday as well, our educational demonstration that we do in the fall. And so the thought process behind it is we are going to be really looking at our data, looking at netting this fall. We used to be able to set one net in Winnipesaukee and collect all of our egg take for the entire state, for the entire landlocked program. Now we do multiple nets, and we have also migrated into Squam because we're just not getting the adults at Winnipesaukee. So we have worked with the Derby folks to be able to discuss future options. They're waiting for us to provide them with input this fall. They're going to actually come out with us as well, just so they can get hands-on, get some experience, and see what we're talking about. And at that point next year, we'll be revisiting the idea and go from there at that point, depending on the data. So,
Is there not a winter fishing derby as well?
That's a statewide derby. The Winnipesaukee Derby targets salmon and lake trout specifically only at Winnipesaukee.
Okay, and the one in the winter, the fishing includes other lakes?
All lakes, statewide.
But no salmon.
But no salmon.
Because you can't take salmon through there.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I just clarify that there was derby this year, it's next year's derby?
Okay, next year's derby is
Yes.
coming.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
That happened in 2015.
Diane, I'm sorry, did you say something about this happening before?
Yeah,
It's been on decline for a while, and back in 2015, we had, it was previous owners to the Derby program, and they canceled it at that point as well because of similar circumstances.
So the fish numbers rebounded and then they were able to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had a question, Diane. Is the decline in the salmon population due to predatory reasons?
We're thinking it's a mix. We definitely have had some issues with size in our hatcheries. We've migrated the salmon program across different hatcheries. Right now, it used to be in Carter Mill. Right now, it's in Nashua, and we're trying to reinvigorate bringing it back to our state facilities. We do have an agreement with Fish and Wildlife Service to host the population that host. It's basically half of the program down there in Nashua, and then we're trying to see what we can do in New Hampton as well. There's a bunch of different things coming down the pipeline, as you all know, with the modernization, and so right now we're keeping everything as is. So, but yeah, it's a mix. We're looking at predation, we're looking at size over the years, see if there's different trends with that in our data. So part of over the winter process is really looking at all of the data that we have, really digging in the weeds and trying to come up with the metric as to what the problem is and what we need to do to hopefully fix it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone further? Okay, director's report.
short report, Kevin's made it a lot shorter for me. As you saw, we were able to swear in 2 new officers last week. Those 2 officers bring us to a grand total of 44 officers for the state of New Hampshire. That tradition, that has been the limit for quite a few years now, Kevin. And we have, in state budget dialect, we had 44 funded positions and 4 unfunded positions. And as Kevin pointed out, the governor supported our request and gave a lot of support to us through the process, and we were able to fund those last 4 positions. So that will take us to our full strength of 48 officers. It doesn't sound like a lot, but if you do the math, it's about a 10% increase in field staff. So that should be felt out in the field. The other thing I was going to add is I participated with Mike Marchand on his RAWA. He was doing teams meetings for sport on RAWA with some of our allies, some of our NGO allies that are also actively supporting the RAWA process. And then yesterday, I spent the day in Coos County touring ATV trails with Lieutenant Ober. So I'm going to leave it at that.
You went with a lieutenant on an ATV?
My wife refused to allow me to go with Sergeant Lucas. Last time didn't end well, and she said never again. So.
Last time he went, the officers were involved in a murder up in northern New Hampshire where the lady cut off the guy's head, if you ever remember. That was the last time he got on an ATV. I hope Coos County is still there after you've done that. Okay, call of the public. Who would like to address the commission? Please stand up and state your name. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Jean Slepian from Stoddard, and I had a question about the core tenant document that was sent out along with the strategic planning survey, so perhaps I should address my comments to.
You certainly can.
One of the core tenets involved recruitment, and it stated that it's imperative to continue to recruit hunters, trappers, and anglers. But it also stated that it's equally important to recruit people who have a deeply imbued conservation ethic. Now, the Fish and Game Department and the Fish and Game Commission have spent the past 15 years opposing representation for people who have a deeply held conservation ethic. So I'm wondering if this new strategic plan signals a change in policy for the department. And if so, and if we do see legislation for 2024, which will attempt to expand the representation on the commission, will the commission support that?
Is there a question? So I would just simply say that the strategic plan is an initiative that's underway, and I would encourage you to participate in it as you already have, and watch and see how that document and that plan comes together.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Hello, Christina Snyder from Chester. First I want to just quickly say that I heard a comment about ticks and opossums. I knew when that study came out in 2021 what the result of that would be, that everybody would think opossums are worthless because they don't take the ticks. So I contacted the Carey Institute of Ecosystem Studies, which had the original information out about opossums and how many ticks And I asked, I said, do you still stand by this? Because this other information has come out. And he has letters after his name, so he's, you know, he knows his stuff, and he says, absolutely, we stand by it. And he forwarded to me a white paper that has all your stats, all your graphs, all your percentages. So maybe I will send that information to my commissioner so she can look at that as well. So, you know, we can all cherry pick. But one other thing quickly, because I know I get timed up here, that I wanted to say was that Newhouse Wildlife Rescue is a wildlife rescue based in Chelmsford, Mass. And their Facebook page has over 124,000 followers, and in comparison, the Fish and Game Facebook page has 104. So just to give you an idea of the reach. And they rescued a mink, and this little mink had been attacked and wounded, and they posted a picture on the update of that mink today, and this is what they said with it. She is fierce for sure. I don't know many that could have survived her ordeal. Her fur is exquisite, it's gorgeous and incredibly soft. It got me thinking. I generally try to help people understand wildlife more so they won't think of them as pests. Her situation is different. People don't really consider mink as pests. We simply coveted what they had and wanted it for ourselves. That natural coat she has is amazing. It takes 50 to 60 mink to make one full-length coat. Who in their right mind kills 50 animals for one coat? Are we really that entitled? Her coat is damaged right now due to her many open wounds. She's quickly healing and recovering. I can't wait to see her fully healed. She will be released, and with that magnificent coat of hers intact. After all, no one should be wearing it but her. And that post has already, after being up only a couple hours, has been shared 351 times and has 400 comments. So I'm trying to give some of you an idea, because I think some of you live in a bubble, because you don't connect with social media. You hang out with game clubs and people that are sportsmen. But I'm trying to give you an idea of what the general population is, and over 90% of people do not like fur, do not like trapping, do not like fur farms, and do not think it is necessary. And these are people that did not receive surveys, and those people that you will not hear from. And I'm telling you right now, it's not just the 3 people that show up here. There are hundreds of thousands of people that think that way. Fur is actually being replicated in a lab. The exact constitute of real fur off an animal. There will be no need for it. And I really think people need to start understanding where the public is and where the people are. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Linda Diane, Wyoming, New Hampshire. I was just going to say something to Commissioner Price, that just because you have a trapping, fishing, or hunting license does not mean you donate to the non-game fund. So you should also include them in your proposal to donate to the non-game fund, just not the people who don't do those activities.
Oh, may I respond to that? Because on your license form, when you go for hunting, fishing, or trapping license, and we'll line out, the very last one is additional contribution to the non-game fund. So when you apply for your license, you're reminded, and most, I don't know what the statistics are, I check the box, but it's already on the license.
Okay, and it comes out of your license fee?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, no, it's separate.
No,
It's separate. It's a
Okay.
separate account.
Okay, well, that's nice, that's good.
But that's
one
already
way,
set up
but
that
just in
way.
your comment, you didn't include.
Yeah,
You
because it
assumed
says,
that trappers, hunters, and fishermen support the non-game fund.
well, that's because they do.
We
They
do
do
too.
at the
We
time
do
that the
too.
license is, that you purchase your license, you're
Yeah,
given
but that
that
doesn't mean
encouragement.
they check that little box. Maybe you can,
No.
not all of them can.
What do you say, Kathy? You track the money?
Well, yes, but I can't say how many people check that
Yeah.
box off, but many people contribute to the non-game fund.
Yeah, many people, not just trappers, hunters, and
Of
fishermen.
all types.
Yes.
Okay, anyone else? Any commissioner?
There's an interesting study that just came out that I do encourage all commissioners to read about the public opinion on hunting, trapping, and fishing that's done annually. And it's the lowest, the opinion of hunting and reasons why people hunt, as well as trapping, is the lowest that's been recorded in history since the study started, which I believe has been going on for 50 years. It was a significant decline. which was very unexpected, but I do suggest all commissioners look at it. I believe Outdoor Life ran a piece on it. I forget the agency that actually ran it, but to Christina's point, there is a public change in temperature around things that, as a commission, we should be aware of.
Any other commissioners? Anything else to come before this meeting? Agreed.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.